In the past 5 years Puyo Puyo fandom has grown immensely ever since Puyo Puyo Tetris 1. It has grown from a niche mostly Japanese only franchise in the West, to a franchise that's less niche with a lot more fan effort to translate things. If you wanna just play things you have a lot of options now. But if you're the type of fan who is nuts about lore things get trickier. Puyo Puyo and the games it's a spin-off of, Madou Monogatari, have a lot of lore and I've been around enough to see people eat that lore all up. But that lore they eat up can be inaccurate. Because a lot of games were Japanese only for the longest time, and the Western fans had less Japanese literate fans around to translate things, there's a lot of misconceptions going around. For example, when I first got into this fan base after playing PPT1, Puyo Puyo N had this reputation of being the serious Puyo game. And the fans had this narrative in their heads that the longer Arle was separated from Carbuncle, the more unreasonably jerkish she became. Go to Precise Museum's channel right now and watch their translation of Puyo Puyo N and see how true that is for yourself. Spoilers, not very serious until the last 2 fights. The tone is run-of-the-mill for Puyo, and Arle is just worried like a normal person would be at worst. That's just one example and I'm already exhausted. That's what this video is for. I asked on Twitter if they have any lore questions they haven't me and the team I've assembled, but mostly the team will answer them. The team consists of, my anonymous friend Fred, has been with Puyo Puyo since Puyo Pop Fever in the 2000s. He's a big Puyo fan and knows a surprising amount of accurate info on it and Madou Monogatari despite the fact he can't read Japanese at all. He's been around that long. You can see proof of that in this video on this very channel. She'll go by the codename Meguca because she wants to play along, but you might know her as Nenilein or Pink Geek Neni. Degree in Japanology, can actually play Japanese games and read them, most informed on the relevant supplementary materials, and the reason you can read a lot of unofficially localized Puyo Puyo things as she translated a fair bit including the upcoming retranslation of Puyo Puyo 15th anniversary. I don't know how my life has gotten to this point to get help from someone like her. But yeah, she'll go by Meguca for this video and potential sequels. She elaborated on Fred's points in this video. And me, outclassed by either. I didn't write any of the answers, I wanted to, but Fred took the initiative and after Meguca put her input in I had nothing of substance to add. And that's fine, I'm trying merging their words into a cohesive piece as well as editing this video. I'm fine with not having that much of a workload. Consider this video a test run. If it's well received and it was a tolerable experience editing it in relation to it, then we'll make more. This video is only a part 1 if a part 2 has been made. If there's no part 2, then I at least picked out 4 big questions a lot of people have. Future videos, if they happen, won't have intros this long. If you have a lore question then feel free to ask them in the comments. Me, Fred and or Meguca will probably answer them and it may be in the next video, maybe. Speaking of maybe we should start the video already.
I was always under the impression that every series that diverges from canon takes place in its own alternate universe, kinda like the Steam City characters in Quest. Is there anything else in the series that suggests the existence of a Puyo Puyo multiverse?
The multiverse is canon and has been since literally Puyo Puyo 1's first release, which included a story mode. The manual directly states that the Puyo that are pop don't die but are spirited away to another world, which, in Fever 2, is implied to be Primptown's world. In Saturn Madou Monogatari Ragnus comes from another world and the final boss, Yog-Sothoth, based on Yog-Sothoth from the Cthulhu mythos, is an interdimensional divine lord of all evil, who has powers similar to Ikolos, feasts on negativity in human hearts and hides in a pocket dimensions outside of time and space. Generally, the Madou world and the world of Primptown are portrayed as 2 magical worlds that are separated by the dimensions but both have Puyo living in them natively, though it is occasionally implied that Puyo weren't originally native to the Madou world and that the world of Primptown is their original home, which they only left through the effects of Puyo battles. Funnily enough, those implications started way back in the Compile era. Suzerain is located in an originally non-magical dimension very similar to the real world that only has Puyo now due to Ikolos shenanigans. Warp Island, the setting of Puyo Puyo Quest, is explicitly a dimensional nexus, where spacetime is so unstable that it often drags in creatures and items from all across spacetime.
And, apparently, multiple versions of the same person from across space-time too. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a mountain of lost single socks somewhere on that island.
That's also how all the crossovers justify themselves. In the Sonic crossover, Ringo directly states that Sonic and company are video game characters in her world and that meeting versions of them from a world where they are real is psyching her out, positively. Accordingly, the Steam City setting is probably also a parallel world to Primp Town's world where alchemy flourished instead of magic. And then, in Quest story mode, there is Intral City, a sci-fi metropolis where the space-time detectives hail from. Dimensional travel and time travel are common but heavily regulated technologies there, once again confirming the multiverse.
I could also go into the whole deal with Puyo Puyo Gaiden, Puyo Wars, but that's a whole different can of worms I don't feel like getting into.
I always hear about the Madou world being reborn since Puyo Puyo by Satan and implemented a rule that nobody ages nor question it. Though I found out the whole reset stuff are from the scratch and Madou stuff. So is the Madou characters never age still applicable or not?
Saturn Madou Monogatari does make reference to the concept of Satan having recreated the Madou world, with him calling it his world and his role of wanting to see if the other people living in it are willing to protect it. It is vague enough to where you can read it differently, but the seeds of Shin Madou lore are noticeably there. There is no indication either way for the age thing. Saturn Madou also makes enough of a point about character ages for Arle, Shizo, Rulu and Ragnas to discuss it at one point, but that doesn't point towards the not aging thing applying. The Sega era downplays the topic of the characters' ages. Writer Yutaka Yoshino has actually stated on Twitter that Sega does have exact canonical ages for all characters in internal documents, which apparently also include the birthdays of the characters whose birthdays we don't know yet. She, however, isn't allowed to reveal the contents of those files by herself. The most she was able to say is that Otomo is in his 20s. Meanwhile, Lemurs is called high school aged in the Fever 2 manual, and Amity is called in her early teens in the Fever 1 Arcadia article. While the not aging thing is often attributed to Kenji Oda, writer of Saturn Madou Monogatari and Shin Madou Monogatari, it wasn't his brain spawn though. That was Alina Ken, another compile writer, who was rather in love with Oda's timeline and wanted to canonize it as well. In a blog post of his, he admits that he really wanted to reflect the recreation of the world from Oda's timeline with an age freeze that way and wanted to use the game Arle's Adventure to not only imply but also partially resolve that plot. However, probably due to the rest of the staff not agreeing with that idea, pretty much any connections of Arle's Adventure to Oda's timeline was cut from the final release of the game, including a line where Arle would have said that we can't stay kids playing around forever, right? To be noted about Kenji Oda is that despite having a bunch of his story treatments rejected by Compile, in fact, Shin Madou was based on the script for Saturn Madou that was being used while the game was still in alpha. Early trailers show scenes from the game with dialogue that never appears in Saturn Madou, but does 100% match up with scenes from Shin Madou Volume 1. Oda still wanted as much of his original vision to remain in the final product as possible. The comment in the end that Satan created the world was his way of doing that.
Bonus ramble related to ages. In Puyo Puyo 7 there are real implications that the mega forms are in fact not the characters' future forms, but rather representations of their personal ideal future selves. The main hint towards this is Lemur's mega form who wears a Snow White mage's robe. In Fever 2, it is directly stated that the mage's robes Lemurs wears reflect the magical affinity of the user and their color, and it is also stated that Lemur's least favorite thing in the world is his family. According to the devs in the drama CDs, Lemurs grew up the son of a revered family of dark mages. So it only would make sense that his ideal future self would be 100% a light mage. This makes sense of a lot of the characters' megaforms while taking away the weirdness that time travel would cause. And also has worrying implications about how close Klug's personal ideals would bring him to being exactly like the Crimson Demon.
What the heck is up with Doppelganger Arle? How does she exist and who made her? Also, because I can't get my hands on some of the Madou games, what's the backstory behind Lilith? All I know from the Nexus wiki is that she's a god basically, but what's with her looking like Arle?
Doppel has no defined origin of any sort, she's just a thing. In fact, it's not even clear how she relates to past generic Doppelgangers and Warle from Madou Monogatari or the Doppelganger Arle from Puyo Puyo 3. In Madou Monogatari, doppelgangers are originally a type of shape-shifting mook that take the form of the person fighting them and sometimes even mimic their moves. Those doppelgangers were apparently really popular with the players, so they tried to include them in Puyo and somehow that led to the edgy Doppel we know and love. And regarding Lilith, short story, Lilith was Satan's wife according to Shin Madou Monogatari. Madou Final Exam, written by Oda incidentally, keeps her exact identity and history pretty mysterious, so most of info regarding her is in the Shin Madou chronology here. She was an extremely powerful magician who passed away, but still created the Madou world through the Seraphim Orb, which was also a thing in Final Exam and stated to have that kind of power. It's implied all is connected to her, possibly being a reincarnation, but how much stock you put into that and how much it's meant to apply to the whole franchise, is up to you. Longer story. Madou Monogatari, Final Exam has Lilith show up in the Phantom Zone, a non-physical space outside of space-time that Shizo summons to evacuate all to when they're all being attacked, though she is mistaken for a doppelganger by Arle. Lilith then just goes along with that, presumably because she doesn't want to explain her whole deal. In the game it's revealed she was the original master of the Jewel Guardians, which is the only reason Phantom God respects Arle right away, and that even though Arle inherited her magic, she hopes desperately that Arle doesn't end up going down the same path as her.
Seems like she regrets how things went for her.
Interestingly, despite the Shin Madou timeline saying Satan and Lilith were basically married, Lilith never brings up Satan and Satan doesn't recognize the ancient labyrinth where Lilith hid the sacred jewels in the Seraphim Orb, so that's a whole can of worms too. According to the Shin Madou timeline, Lilith didn't just die, but she lost her physical form because she became too powerful to exist as a human and went full Meguca.
If you get my reference. The timeline states she has, and I quote, ascended to a higher plane of existence and become a being of pure will. It's because of this that I like to half jokingly, half seriously throw out there, that she's technically the same thing as Marle and Squares now.
The Shin Madou timeline is a creature of pure madness, but when you do read it, it claims that Arle was a being with Lilith's powers, specifically created to, well, for lack of a better way of putting it, kill God, so make of that what you will. Oh, fun fact, our old pal Ken, yes, that other compile writer, has a headcanon that Doppelganger Arle from Pocket Puyo Puyo N is actually half of our Arle's soul that was split off on accident after Arle fulfilled her destiny and killed God, but that's all it is, one writer's headcanon. It does explain though why he wrote Pocket Puyo Puyo N the way he did. This is written about in the same blog post I mentioned before.
Is Arle okay?
She's alright I guess.
It depends on the writer, LOL.
So does anyone know which stories are canon in 15th anniversary?
I know which stories in 15th I do not want to be canon.
There is no direct saying. Some form of 15th anniversary clearly happened, since it has been referenced since and multiple characters recognize each other from that game. There are some moments that seem to be of questionable canon status, since Liddell and Satan don't seem to know each other in 20th anniversary and Arle's wish to travel between her world and the Madou world never comes up again, meaning she likely never won the tournament. That said, some glaring examples like that aside, this enters more speculative territory, so we won't make judgment there on what counts and what doesn't.
My personal take on this, as someone who has translated this entire game into English, is that the actual tournament bracket that did happen in canon is one we never saw in game and all the ones we did see are just alternate timelines, each of which shares some events with a prime timeline, but we don't know exactly which. Like, Satan vs. Amity definitely happened, Arle vs Satan definitely happened, Klug vs Felny definitely happened, etc etc etc. In the end, a lot remains open to interpretation.
And that was me, Fred, and Meguca's Q&A. I hope you learned something today. It's a bit too early to say if I wanna continue this as a series. Again, this is just a test run to see how it goes. It's up to future me to decide if I wanna continue this. Which is all dependent on how all this video is received and more importantly how big a pain it was to put this video together. What does future post video editing me have to say? I have to say that I don't think the mostly straight-faced essay-ish format suits me. I prefer to work on things that make me laugh. I pretty much only finished it as quickly as I could, which was pretty quick. They can attest to that, as this was a semi-promise to Fred and Meguca. But while it wasn't difficult to edit, the fact it's light on jokes to look forward to edit did make it feel like a slog. That said, probably worried my co-writers there. I think I'm 70% sure I wanna make more of these. Partially because who else will? I think it's just a question of how often we'll do them. It's a first installment. Kinks need to be worked out, like maybe I'll ask Fred and Meguca to prepare some images already while they'll write the answers. I don't know. We also got to figure out how many questions we'll answer in the future. But that's not for you viewers to know. Maybe. I at least wanna put out a Puyo Puyo and a Madou in a nutshell part between this possible part 1 and a potential part 2. Please tell us what you think of this video. Those were words I said. Words I don't know yet. Special thanks to my best friend Fred, and Meguca who I'm still trying to comprehend helped me with this but I ain't complaining. Have anything to say you two, especially you Fred, you've been quiet. And you can shill something if you like. Meguca, I'll allow it. Fred declined.
Tell your friends about Puyo. Tell your friends about Puyo. Tell your friends pets about Puyo. Spread the word of the small wobbly ones. Please, I beg on you. This franchise being so niche is a sin, and if people don't start recognizing my Amity cosplay at cons soon I will be sad.
Also here's Meguca's Ko-fi, if you want and can afford to tip her. As one of this video's heavy lifters I'm giving hers top billing. And here's my Ko-fi. Don't worry, I plan to only shill mine in talky videos like this. Otherwise it's relegated to the description and comments of my shitposts. We'll see if there's a part 2. Until then, feel free to post questions in the comments. Either three of us will answer to the best of our abilities. If you want more, this video of Fred explaining Puyo/Madou canon is officially part 0. It helped spark the idea for this one. Have a nice day. I'm gonna write the next Puyo in a nutshell. It's time to Octagon.